If you are a teacher, parent, administrator, student, and/or anyone who loves reconnecting children with nature, and you want to figure out how to cultivate learning gardens and nature-based curriculum, then this is the podcast, the Outdoor Classrooms podcast. My name is Victoria Hackett. I am the founder of Outdoor-Classrooms.com and the Secret Gardens Nature Classes. I love witnessing the magic that happens when children are playfully learning outdoors. Observing the return of wonder and curiosity when children are interacting with nature is pure magic. This is the podcast that is going to help you capture children's interest and give you not only inspiration, but some real life strategies that are going to help you figure out how to use the outdoor space, your outdoor space, as a teaching tool, so you can enlighten the playful learning experience for young children. Welcome to our Outdoor Classrooms community. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I want to tell you a story, and it's a story about taking a leap. For me, that leap was very literal. I traveled to Sweden this summer to do a hut-to-hut trek, and I want to make that distinction because when I say I went to Sweden, you might picture a vacation. It was a vacation, but you might picture hotels and sightseeing and restaurants and wandering around a beautiful city. And while Sweden certainly is beautiful, that's not what this trip was about for me. I went on a trek. I was moving through the landscape from hut to hut, carrying what I needed and knowing that each day I had somewhere new to reach. And there was something about that experience that has stayed with me. Actually, there's a lot of things about it that has stayed with me. The physical experience, the landscape, the uncertainty, the preparation, the simplicity of knowing that your job for the day is essentially to put one foot in front of the other. The moments when you look ahead and think, we're going there? I mean, there was miles and it was beautiful, but it was miles and miles and miles of paths and hills, and it was incredible. But the moments that you look behind you and realize, wait, I came from there? And of course, the people you're walking with, the people you encounter along the way, the conversations, the encouragement, the experience of doing something individually while also being a part of something bigger than yourself. Since I've been home, I found myself thinking about that trek in connection with the work that we do here at Outdoor Classrooms. And I've been so curious about what this ripple effect is going to be. And I think it's coming slowly. And I've been thinking about it in connection also with our circle community, because I think there's something really interesting about taking a trek like that. You can prepare for it. You can research it. You can buy the equipment. You can look at the map. You can talk to the people who have done it. You can think about what you're going to bring, which I did a lot of, and you can try to anticipate what might happen, which I also did. I did mindfulness exercises. I read the itinerary about 100 times, but eventually you have to start walking. And isn't that true of so many things? At some point, preparation has become participation. At some point, thinking about it has become doing it. At some point, you have to take the leap. And it's what we're talking about today. Not reckless leaps, not throwing preparation out the window. I'm talking about those moments when we've prepared enough, when we've thought enough, when we've wondered enough, and we're still standing at the edge saying, am I ready? because maybe being ready isn't actually the requirement. Maybe being willing is. So, wherever you're listening today, maybe you're driving, you're walking, working in your garden, setting up your classroom, or hopefully spending some time outside, I want you to think about one question. What is the leap that is calling you right now? So I don't want you to answer it yet. Just hold on to it because we're going to come back to that. So before there was a trek, there was a decision. Before I was actually walking from hut to hut in Sweden, there was a moment when this was simply an idea. And ideas are easy, aren't they? We say, wouldn't that be amazing? Someday I'd love to. I've always wanted to. Someday is comfortable because someday doesn't require anything from us today. Then eventually something happens. You have to decide, am I actually going to do this? This is where I want to take you back to how this trek actually happened for me. So I may have already talked about this here, but Christy Nuttall, a member of the Circle community, was inspired by a conversation that we were having in one of our roundtables, and we were talking about dreams. And I'm going to have her on the podcast at some point to just dig in deeper about the importance of dreaming for us nature-based educators. So she came back to me, I think like a week after that round table and said, Victoria, there's one spot open for this hut to hut trek with Linda McGurk. And I think it has your name on it. And here I was doing this whole round table talking about dreams. And there was some sense of urgency that I had to decide quickly so I wouldn't lose that spot. And I just didn't think too much, and I said yes, and was the smartest decision I've made in a long time. That's that got me into the hut-to-hut track, and then so why Sweden is because Linda McGurk is from Sweden, and she started these trek-to-trek hikes and is an expert hiker and could lead us into the experience. What attracted me to the experience was the fact that it was a very, very small group of all women. So it was 4 American women. I knew Christy, so I didn't know the other 2, and I had interviewed Linda on the podcast, so I sort of knew her. And I love the smallness, the very small group, and the fact that I kinda knew Linda, and I was very eager to kind of go through this experience with her, knowing that she had also written such incredible books. There's No Such Thing as Bad Weather. So, what made me excited about this trip was I think I've talked about this in the past that I've said yes to many things like the marathon, but I haven't done that in decades. So, it was really interesting to test myself to see if I could physically do this, if I could mentally do this, something like this as a middle-aged woman. Truly, I'll put it out there. So that made me a little nervous. It made me nervous that I was gonna be on the other side of the world, but there was never really a moment that I talked myself out of it. I will say that there were moments that I was incredibly nervous, but there was never a moment that I was gonna turn around and not do it. I had already purchased the tickets, I had already signed up, I had been training, and it was just a matter of jumping in. And so, one of the other hikers had said, "Yes, this trip has taken up so much brain space," and I couldn't have agreed with her more. And then I think when Christy came to Boston, she was coming from Utah, and then we actually got on the plane is when I said, "Okay, I'm actually doing this." There's such a difference between I'd like to do that and I'm doing it. because once you've said yes, things start moving. You make the reservation, you buy the ticket, you start preparing, and suddenly the dream has a date attached to it. And I think this happens with outdoor classrooms all the time. People tell me, I've always wanted to do more with our outdoor space. We'd love to create an outdoor classroom. Someday we're going to tackle this area. And I understand there are budgets, there are regulations, there are staff considerations, there are families, there is time, that big word time. There are a million reasons why, quote unquote, someday feels safer than today. But I wonder how many wonderful ideas live permanently in someday. At some point, somebody has to say, let's begin. Not, let's have the whole thing figured out. Just, let's begin. That's the first leap. We do not have to have everything figured out before we take the leap. Let's just start. Let's just begin. So, one of the interesting things about preparing for a trek is deciding what you're going to carry, because whatever you bring, you carry. That changes your relationship with stuff very quickly. Literally spent, I think, 2 hours going up and down the aisles of REI, making sure that I had everything on my list. And suddenly you're asking and looking at everything and asking, do I really need this? And I love that question beyond trekking. Do I really need this? Because we carry so much as educators, as leaders, as business owners, as parents, as humans, and not all of it fits neatly into a backpack. We carry expectations. We carry assumptions. We carry things somebody told us 20 years ago. We carry, this is the way we've always done it. We carry fear, what parents might say. We carry fear, what colleagues might think. We carry ideas about what a classroom is supposed to look like. We carry ideas about what children can and cannot handle. We carry perfectionism. Oh, do we carry perfectionism? And perfectionism is heavy. So, talking about packing for Sweden, what do you bring? Did you overpack? Was there something you debated bringing? I brought a lot of snacks. I did pretty well packing, I must say. And so, yes, what did carrying your own things teach me? Just like I said before, there's so much that we're carrying. Do we need everything? Do we need to carry everything? But it's also physical things that we're carrying in our packs, but it's also the mental things that we're carrying in our mind. And at one point in the hike, I had sort of fallen behind. I was being very careful with my ankle because I think I had twisted it and I didn't want to twist it again. But it's also that I am a little on the shorter side and my legs are shorter. And many of the women on the trek were taller and had much longer legs and longer huge long strides. So I noticed that I was sort of getting into my head and going, oh, you're falling behind. And then I had this aha moment that, again, I was looking at their strides and how, one stride of theirs was like 3 steps of mine. And so I immediately started giving myself a trail name, and I called myself Small Steps, and then announced my trail name when we all gathered as a group. I said, "Okay, group, I've just given myself a new trail name, which is Small Steps." and they loved it. So what ended up happening is we gave each other a different trail name for whatever they were sort of known for. My friend Christy ended up being Songbird. Anya was Long Strides. We had Francesca was Note Taker. It was just absolutely wonderful, but it gave reason and purpose to who you are on the trail, where you are at the time. So naming that for me really identified me as I take small steps. I might fall behind. You all have very, very long strides, but that's okay. We're all going to the same place. So I think about this again with outdoor classrooms, something we make in the beginning so heavy before we've moved one log, planted one plant, or watched one child explore. We've created an enormous list of everything the outdoor classroom needs to become. I need this and this and this. And suddenly the vision is so heavy, we can't even pick it up and carry it. So, what if we packed lighter? What do we actually need to begin? We need children. We need nature. We need time, curiosity. We need a willingness to observe, a willingness to experiment. That's a pretty good starting pack. And everything else can evolve. So here's another question for you. What are you carrying that you don't need anymore? I love that question. What are you carrying that you don't need anymore? An assumption? An expectation? Someone else's definition of what an outdoor classroom should look like? The belief that you have to do it perfectly? Maybe taking the leap isn't only about what we're willing to pick up. Maybe it's also about what we're willing to put down. So then the day comes. You're not preparing anymore. You're there. You're standing at the beginning. And this is one of my favorite parts of thinking about the trek, because before that moment, I could imagine what it would be like. But imagining something and experiencing something are very different. So there we were. We were at the beginning of our trek. We did a few couple mini hikes before the big trek with our backpacks. It started with sort of a mountain climb, and it was exciting. I was nervous. It sort of felt like, oh my goodness, this is like the beginning of a marathon run. Did I, questioning, did I have all the right things? I had definitely, I had plenty of water, which I think made my pack even heavier, but it was kind of a trek. It was a trek uphill. And then we flattened out, and it was this miles and miles and miles of beautiful landscape. The weather was absolutely perfect. We were not wearing shorts. We were wearing hiking pants, and I was excited. I was invigorated. Yet at the same time, I was also very nervous. I was making sure that I was keeping up. I didn't want to fall behind. So, yeah, did my reality match what I imagined? I think so. I don't even, and part of me didn't really know what to expect. But there I was. I had started this trek to trek, and kind of being together and talking and meeting people along the way. It just felt refreshing and exuberant and incredible. So there is something wonderful about a beginning, and there's something uncomfortable about it too, because you're officially a beginner. You're no longer planning, you're learning. That's vulnerable. And I think adults sometimes have a harder time being beginners than children do. Children will try something and they'll fall down. Then they'll try it again. they'll build something and have it collapse, and they'll build it again. They'll dig a hole that fills with water and think, interesting. Adults tend to think, well, that didn't work. What if we borrowed a little more of the child's mindset? Interesting. Let's see what happens. Let's try. That's the spirit of an outdoor classroom. And I think it's also the spirit we need when we take a leap professionally. You don't have to know everything on day one. So again, we were going up this mountain, and then all of a sudden, it was sort of flatlands, and we didn't know what to expect. We didn't know what our hut was even going to look like. We had no idea. But what we found out was that ended up being an 11-mile day, 11-mile hike day, but it didn't feel like it because I think we were so invigorated and excited that we couldn't think too much about, oh, wow, we're doing 11 miles today. So we needed to be willing to learn on day one. And that's a huge difference. And part of day one was getting to our hut and making our dinner, cleaning up after our dinner, and learning all the ins and outs of being in a hut in the middle of nowhere. It was amazing. So, with that, when you're trekking, you rarely see the entire journey laid out in front of you. You kind of see what's in front of you. You follow the trail, and they have these amazing trail markers. They have these X's, red X's throughout, and they're perfectly distance apart all the way across the lands. And you just look for the next marker. You keep moving. And Linda had wonderful stories about how she would do the same trek, but in the wintertime, and how the landscape changed for her. So you keep moving. And sometimes I think making change unnecessarily difficult because we insist on seeing the entire path before taking that first step. We want to know, what's it going to look like in 6 months? What's that finished outdoor classroom going to look like? How much will everything cost? How will every teacher use it? How will every child respond? What will every parent say? What happens in the winter? What happens next? What happens if this happens? What happens if that happens? And suddenly we're trying to solve problems that don't even exist yet. So meanwhile, we haven't even taken step one. Maybe you don't need a whole trail. Maybe you need the next marker. And that's what's there. They have these beautiful markers. For your outdoor classroom, the next marker might be to observe. Go outside tomorrow and don't change anything. Just watch. Where do children naturally gather? Where do they avoid? Where do they linger? Where do they move? Where do they create? Where do conflicts happen? Where does imagination happen? Where are they telling you, with their behavior, what space needs? Take a step. Maybe the next marker is ask. Ask the children, what would you change out here? Ask the teachers. Ask the families. Maybe the next marker is try one thing. Not 12 things, one. And then observe again. That's how an outdoor classroom grows. Step, observe, adjust. Step, observe, adjust. Do you feel the rhythm? And it sounds an awful lot like trekking. You get a rhythm. You get a rhythm in your body. You get a rhythm in your breath. And once you get that rhythm, you just keep taking the next step. Now we need to talk about something important. Taking the leap sounds very inspiring after the fact. You finish something hard and say, I'm so glad I did that. But somewhere in between the beginning and the beautiful ending, there's usually a moment when you think, why am I doing this? Right? So during our trip, we were hiking up the Halag Glacier, and that was the destination. And of course, on that day, it was stormy, it was windy, the weather was terrible. But the mindset of our group was incredible, positive. There was not one negative thought going through anybody's mind. It was like, let's do this. So we did the hike. We literally had to, the wind was so incredibly strong that we had to literally duck. We had to duck down low until the wind gust calmed down so we could climb up to the next level. So it was definitely the most difficult part of the trek. I was so happy because I didn't have to wear my pack on the heavy pack on that day. It was an up trek and a back trek. So it was physical. The weather kept changing, and we got to as high as we possibly could. In my eyes, we were very, very close to the top, but we didn't quite make it. But in my eyes, we did. And we had a very, very quick lunch because it was very cold. And then we trekked down. And for some reason, I was invigorated and very happy on this very tumultuous day of wind and rain and whatnot. But I felt almost like the air and the wind was just lifting me into this very happy state. So even though it was incredibly difficult and I was absolutely exhausted, and parts of my body hurt. I had blisters from before, but at the same time I was excited because we really had done most of this trek, and I felt that it was like I was coming into the end zone. Like, yes, I signed up for this trip and I am doing it. And this group of women, they were all encouraging us the entire way. And the only thing we needed to do was get down to the bottom. And then the next day was our final day and hiking out. This matters because we need to stop pretending that doing meaningful things and doing hard things feels meaningful every minute that we're doing them. Sometimes meaningful things feel hard. We were singing, we can do hard things. And creating an outdoor classroom can feel hard. Trying to shift the school's culture can feel hard. Getting staff buy in can feel hard. Explaining the value of outdoor learning over and over and over again can feel hard. Starting something and realizing it's going to take longer than you thought can feel hard. And it's where I think people sometimes mistake difficulty for a sign that they're doing something wrong. Maybe not. Maybe you're simply on the uphill part of the trail with the wind gusts and the rain and everything else that you have to squat down on the rock because if you're not going to squat, then you're going to topple over. So you do not have to pretend that the hill isn't steep. You can say, this is hard and we can do hard things. That became one of our mantras actually on our trip, and still keep walking. Christy actually became our songbird, and she would just start singing. When things actually became hard, she would just break out into songs. So both things can be true. And here's what I want to talk about: the circle community. Because one of the things I kept thinking about during and after this trek was the importance of the people we walk with. There are things that we have to do ourselves. Nobody could move my feet for me. Nobody could carry me through the entire trek. I had to walk on my own trail with my own heavy pack. But that doesn't mean I had to experience it alone. And those are the two very, 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 very different things. Independence doesn't have to mean isolation. I think that's the importance for educators, especially nature based educators, because we, as nature based educators, are trying to do something differently. You might be the person at your school saying, could we rethink our outdoor space? You might be the one person saying, what if children went outside in this weather? What if we trusted them with this? What if we added loose parts? What if we stopped thinking about the playground only as recess? And sometimes being the person asking those questions can feel lonely. That's why the circle community matters. Again, I cannot say enough about the group that I went with on the trek, this Swedish Highlands trek. Each and every person contributed something to the group, and I think that's why we all have our own individual trail names. Each and every personality was respected. Each and every person's strength and weakness was embraced. So, thinking about how these women are helping us, how they made me laugh when I was exhausted, when they helped me cross water, creeks of water. Many times we would share food, we would share snacks. I just felt that I wasn't alone. I was always walking beside somebody. I mean, I was there moments that I was walking alone, but I never felt that I wasn't with the group, I should say. And there was always just someone also just simply being there. So sometimes the person beside you doesn't have to solve anything. It's their presence that changes the experience. And that is what I want for the Circle membership community. I don't want the Circle to be a place where everybody comes because I have all the answers. I don't. None of us do. I want it to be a place where I can say, here's what I'm trying. Here's where I'm stuck. Here's what happened. Has anyone dealt with this? Look what my children did today. I have an idea. Help me think it through. And then someone else says, I've been there. Or, here's what worked for us. Or, have you thought about this? Or sometimes keep going. That's walking together. So, one thing I really want people to understand about the circle is that you don't have to arrive with a finished outdoor classroom. You don't have to arrive as an expert. You don't have to arrive with beautiful photographs. You don't have to know all the terminology. You don't have to prove that you belong here. You can come with a question. You can come with a problem. You can come with a patch of dirt and say, okay, what could we do here? I actually think that's where some of the best conversations begin. I love the circle. I call it my second family. And we will have many more conversations bringing on circle members to talk about what their experiences have been. But they've taken big steps, small steps. They've shared their own uncertainties. And that's what I love. One person takes a step, someone else sees it and thinks, maybe I could do that. They take a step, then someone learns from them. That's how change spreads. not because one expert stood at the front of and handed everybody the perfect blueprint, but because people were willing to learn in community. That's when I think the circle geometrically, there's something I love about the image. There isn't a front of a circle. There isn't a back. We're beside one another. And I think that's a beautiful model for professional growth. That's why I called it the circle. There's another piece of hut to hut trekking that I think matters. The hut, you walk, you work, you cover the distance, and then you arrive. There's somewhere to stop. And that's what we did. We walked, we trekked, we arrived, we ate, we celebrated, and then we did it again the next day. And when we arrived at Halags, it was incredible because we were able to do a sauna, do a cold plunge, which I could only put my feet in. And we had the most amazing meals there. And it felt like a warm hug. It felt like nature giving back to us, taking off my pack and seeing all the families, taking off my boots and smiling and eating and talking and resting and just looking back on the day. And there's no words that to describe it, but it was just joy. It was joy and accomplishment and pride and all of that mixed into one. We don't talk about this in our work. We talk about doing, creating, improving, growing, learning, leading. What's next? What's next? What's next? But reflection is part of the journey. Rest is part of the journey. Celebration is part of the journey. Sometimes you need to stop and say, look how far we've come. Maybe your outdoor classroom isn't finished. That's good. It's probably never going to be finished. But look at what's changed. Look at what the children are doing now, what they weren't doing 6 months ago. Look at the teacher who was hesitant and is now bringing ideas. Look at the family who didn't understand at first and now sends you materials. Look at those children building, digging, creating, negotiating, imagining, taking the metaphorical backpack for a minute. Look around. You've come somewhere. Here's the funny thing about reaching a hut on a hut-to-hut trek. You're not done. You sleep, you rest, and then morning comes. You put the pack back on. You start walking again. I love that because that's what growth actually looks like. We want these magical finish lines. When our outdoor classroom is done, when I finally know enough, when I finish this training, when I become confident, but there isn't really a finish line. There is another morning, another question, another season, another group of children, another challenge, another idea, another trail. The goal isn't to arrive at a place where you know everything. The goal is to become someone who knows how to keep learning. That's very different. And that's what I hope we're cultivating inside the circle. Not dependency, not tell me the right answer, but confidence, curiosity, community, the ability to say, I don't know yet. Let's figure it out. So children understand taking the leap better than we do. Watch them outside. A child stands on a log. They're deciding whether to step on the next one. You can almost see the calculation happening, the reach, the wobble, the step. Maybe they jump off. Maybe they go back. Maybe they call a friend. Then they try again. The child encounters a giant puddle. We see wet clothes. We see possibility. A child has a stick, a piece of rope, an idea that makes absolutely no sense to us. And they're completely committed to finding out whatever works. That's learning. It's uncertainty plus curiosity. And Outdoor Classrooms gives children opportunities to practice that. Not reckless risk, not danger, but appropriate challenge, agency, problem solving, decision making, trying, adjusting, trying again. And I wonder, when did we adults become so uncomfortable with not knowing exactly what will happen? Maybe part of our work is remembering. There's a moment that happens when you're walking. You stop, you turn around, and suddenly you can see where you've been. And sometimes it's shocking. We came from there. I can't even tell you how many times I said that. When you're in the middle of the walking, you're focused on the next step. You don't necessarily feel yourself covering the distance, but then you look back. You look back. It's amazing. I can't even describe. So thinking about these pieces for your outdoor classroom, how the trek, how the walk, how all of this leaping into the circle community, how all of that can apply to your experience. Let me know what resonated with you. Leave it in the comments. I'd love to hear about your journey and your trek. Let's talk soon. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you're ready to take the next step and dive deeper into our community, here's how you can get involved. First, you can join our 1-hour workshops. These happen every month with fresh and exciting new topics each time. It's a great way to get a taste for what we offer. If you enjoy the workshops, you can become part of our Circle membership community, and this will give you access to not only all the new workshops that happen every month, but it will also give you access to our entire workshop library, which is growing. It will also give you access to our monthly roundtable discussions. And also, as a member, you receive exclusive discounts on all our programs. It's wonderful, wonderful family. The final step, if you would like to dig deeper into our community, is to join our Outdoor Classrooms Teacher Certification Program. This program is for those educators who are eager to dig even deeper into our programming, and it's the perfect next step. If you want to learn more about each of these programs, or you're not sure where you need to start, or any questions that you might have, schedule a one-on-one discovery call with me, Victoria Hackett. I will put all of that information in the show notes. You can also go to our website at www.outdoor-classrooms.com to learn more information. We can't wait to welcome you into our community. Until next time,